All right, so we are live. Welcome to our weekly wellness sessions for musicians. My name is Francesca Leo, and I'm the chair of the Puerto Rico Flute Symposium Wellness Committee. I'm also the founder of playingwithoutpain.com, and I'm a flutist. I'm joined today by my colleague Jessica Koebbe, who holds her DMA and other degrees in piano performance and specializes in helping teachers learn how to address performance anxiety and adopt mindfulness practices into their private teaching. She teaches at Mid-America Nazarene University and is the founder of Mindful Music Pedagogy. Our first few sessions have addressed the relationship between the body and brain as it relates to breathing. At the end of 2020, we shifted over to looking at the relationship between the brain and the body. All sessions are archived on the Puerto Rico Flute Symposium's Facebook page, as well as playingwithoutpain.com and mindfulmusicpedagogy.com. If you're a music educator and you wish to share this video with your students, we also offer the recorded Zoom session, which you can find on diazdelmoralfoundation.org/wellness-for-musicians or on playingwithoutpain.com/wellness-sessions-for-musicians. You may also send us an email at wellness@prflutesymposium.org, where we can directly share the MP4 file with you. We welcome questions or topic and guest artist recommendations as we proceed with these sessions. You are always welcome to send an email to wellness@prflutesymposium.org with any suggestions you may have. And if you would like to make a donation and you've been enjoying these sessions, we would really appreciate any amount that you're able to give, and you can make the donation at the link in our description. So today we will begin with the brain portion of our wellness sessions, and Jessica will explain the benefits of mindfulness and guide us through a visualization exercise. So I invite you all to take a breath with us. And I'll turn things over to Jessica.
Thank you. Yeah, so mindfulness is, I feel like, a little bit of a empty or loaded word, depending on what we have associated with it on our own. But today I thought I'd just share with you the definition that I've decided to adopt for this, which is basically mindfulness teaches us mental and physical awareness, just connecting to the moment mentally and physically throughout the day. And of course, we move throughout our day thinking about what we're doing and what we're going to do. But what we often fail to do is to recognize the power that connecting to the physical and mental moment has over our minds and bodies. So mindfulness in this regard combines physical relaxation with clear, careful cognitive awareness and involves the passive direction of thoughts. It's really about becoming a thought observer. It's not about trying to get rid of thoughts or trying to necessarily control them, but just to be able to step back and see what's going on in our mind and as also what's happening in our bodies. And then if we don't like something about what we're thinking or feeling, to gently redirect those thoughts and feelings that we don't wish to be entertaining at that time. It is, mindfulness is closely tied to meditation, but it expands that practice a little bit more broadly and applies the idea to our entire waking consciousness. So I believe it's a vital skill to develop, as we really need to understand that it's completely within our control to create and enter our desired mental space, to choose what thoughts we allow when we're performing especially, and then to direct those thoughts at any point throughout our day, but certainly as we're practicing and performing. One thing that I have noticed personally, and then my students who I've done this with have shared with me, is that practicing this can really result in bringing up a lot of thoughts and emotions or memories that maybe were just hiding below the surface that we hadn't really thought about in some time. And that's really, really normal. It's pretty necessary, I think, actually, because it's important to understand a lot of times we react and we move through our day in a reactionary phase, and we don't even realize that. But often what we're reacting to is something that is below the surface that we haven't dealt with and that we're not even aware that's really kind of on our mind and in our bodies. So as we go through this exercise that I'll be showing you in just a minute, But anytime that you're really trying to practice mindfulness, I really recommend keeping a pen and paper or some other note-taking device nearby to record those thoughts and emotions, because you will want to work through them at some point, but during the context of the exercise is not the time. So acknowledge them, write them down, and then come back to them later. But I think we all know what that feels like. We've all had this happen, right? We're practicing, we're kind of in the zone or not, but then all of a sudden we remember something. We remember an errand we forgot to run, or an email we forgot to answer, or a phone call we forgot to return, or suddenly this memory pops up out of nowhere and surprises us, maybe with its intensity. And so when we're in a mindful state, we can decide whether or not we want to use these thoughts rather than letting them surprise us or distract us. We might find that actually in the moment, it's a useful emotion to tap into for that particular passage, or we might not, but we don't have to engage. We realize that we have the control to set that thought or distraction or emotion aside and continue focusing on what we were doing. So, of course, the trick is understanding how to access some of those emotions and thoughts, and learn how to implement them in a positive way when they do surface in a performance setting. But that requires a lot of practice. So we've got to practice learning, first of all, how to observe the thoughts, being quiet enough, long enough to tune into what actually is going on in our mind. And it takes a little while to get below the surface chatter. Then it takes some practice to acknowledge the thoughts and to practice observing them without engaging with them. And then it takes practice assigning each of those thoughts or emotions to its appropriate space. Maybe we want them, maybe yes, maybe no, and we get to choose. So that's why having that notepad is helpful, I think, when you're doing these, because if it's not beneficial to the moment, but it's something that you realize is important, that does need to happen, you can write it down and then set it aside, and not be trying to hang on to it in your mind because you are afraid you might forget it. So when we're training our minds to concentrate on something, like channeling a desired emotion or a level of concentration in performance for a certain period of time, our focus really needs to be steadfast. It needs to be unmoved by the many, many other thoughts that are competing for our attention. And that's really what the skill of mindfulness allows us to craft. It allows us to craft this awareness. When we're mindful, we're aware, we're connected to what's happening to, in, and around us. We see, hear, and feel things a little differently when we're really focused on them than we do when we're not paying attention. So thinking back to school and those times when we actually had microscopes or magnifying glasses, right? And you remember just that fascination that came when you sat there and you used that microscope or the magnifying glass and you looked at something, just one thing, and you looked at it and that detail that just pops out, right? And how magnificent and how awe-inspiring that was, right? Things come into focus that we didn't even know were there, but of course they were there, right? So that's what it's like when we're mindful in our practicing. Things slow down and we can zoom in and appreciate these really small details that are happening in real time. So I just encourage you to think about that and then use this exercise that we're about to do to help you start to create that mental space, and then think about what it would look like with your practicing and your performing if you were paying attention like that, like you were looking at it under a microscope. So let's get ready to do this exercise, and I invite you to find a very comfortable place. It can be sitting, it can be laying. This is supposed to just be a total comfort. I call it the visualization bubble exercise, and you'll see why in just a moment. Throughout the exercise, I'm going to give you some instructions. It's meant to engage all 5 senses. And then after the instructions, there'll be silence. So just don't be concerned about the silence. It's there for you. Try not to let yourself get distracted by thinking about how long I've been quiet, and just engage with the exercise as we do this, and let there be space to do whatever mental work you need to in that moment. So first, I invite you to close your eyes and breathe in and out. Breathe in deeply and fully. Exhale fully and slowly. Listen to the sound of your breath as it enters and exits your body. And now with your eyes closed, I want you to imagine that you see in front of you a translucent bubble. It's the size of a small apartment. There's a door. You walk up to the door, open it, and then close it. Notice how the room sounds now that you've closed the door. Is it quiet? Is it noisy? Whatever it is, I want you to decide the comfortable level of noise that you would like, and then set that level inside the bubble. And as you do so, you're calmly looking around, engaging with the sound of the space. And as you sense distractions coming, just remember, you're inside the bubble. They can't come in. And draw your attention back to the sound that you're enjoying inside. Now I want you to think about a color that brings you the most calm and the most joy. You're going to set about decorating the inside of your bubble with that color. Might be some paint on the walls, maybe incorporating it as some artwork, maybe a piece of furniture, a rug. Go ahead and start to arrange the room and let that color infuse it. Continue to observe the noise and your breath. And let your eyes engage with that color. Remember, if there's a persistent thought, go ahead and write it down real quick and let it go. Next, I want you to notice how things inside your bubble feel. You were decorating it with some color a moment ago. Now I want you to go ahead and choose your furniture, your furnishings throughout. Whatever that could be, but just make sure they're comfortable and they're cozy. Could be rugs, bed, chair, couch, desk, whatever. But as you put them in the room, touch them, run your hand across them and feel the texture. Is it smooth? Is it bumpy? Is it rough? Is it like velvet? And you might have a combination of things like that. They might be that color that you just imagined putting through the room. I want you to think about sitting on them, laying down. Engage with the feel of each of those pieces. Remember that you can observe your thoughts and your feelings, but don't engage with them yet. Next, I want you to imagine your favorite scent. It might be fresh cut grass. It might be the sea. Who knows? Just imagine what that is and take a deep inhale of that. Let it permeate the room. Notice what that does to your mind when you think about inhaling that scent. What it does to your memories. And then finally, pay attention to the fact that you're hungry. And think of the best meal, the tastiest thing you have ever eaten in your life. What is that? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? And now imagine that you have a plate of that food right in front of you right now. You're going to take a deep inhale of it and then pick up a utensil and begin to eat. Notice how your mouth reacts when you're chewing that food. How your brain responds when you swallow that. And now that you've finished eating, you're going to find the most comfortable spot in your bubble, and you're going to go to that and relax. Then I want you to look up at the sky through the bubble, and you'll notice that it's raining. You see the clouds and you see the raindrops, but because you're in your bubble, they can't come in. So you see the raindrops falling on the bubble, but then sliding off. These represent all the distractions that we face. You're going to notice them. You notice the thoughts, you notice the feelings, you notice the people, the sounds, everything that we encounter when we're performing. But they can't affect us. You are tucked away safely inside that bubble. And now it's time to leave the bubble. So you're going to walk to the door and you're going to open it and close it. And then you'll just remember that the bubble is there anytime you need it. So now go ahead and open your eyes and think about how you feel. But I just want you to imagine that when you're practicing this week, every time that you go to the practice room, imagine that as you enter that room, you're entering your bubble. And then every time you perform, you're entering that bubble. And just see how that impacts your ability to focus when you're playing and practicing. So Francesca, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Oh yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
This is my favorite part is to ask, what was the color that you put in your room?
Okay, so it's actually the color that's actually in my
In
room.
your room?
Favorite color, which as you can see is lavender,
That's
slash purple. But yeah, absolutely. So I think I've actually taken that visualization exercise literally, and I've painted my room so
awesome.
with the color that brings me like
Oh,
serenity and calmness. Yeah. Yeah.
that's
So
awesome.
that was my color was lavender.
And then what about your scent? What was that?
My scent was this one of my favorite candles. It's
Mhm.
called, of course, lavender mimosa was
Nice.
the scent, and it smells like lavender, mixed with like the mimosa flower, I think, which is like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's like more
Mhm.
a little bit like more like fruity kind of.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sweet. Yeah, and then my food scent was
Yeah.
pasta.
Ah.
Like a big bowl of spaghetti, and I was just like,
That's nice.
oh my God.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
fun.
that was a
Oh,
really great exercise though, and I was thinking, although I was trying to come back to the visualization, but
yeah.
a thought that did pop up in my head throughout it was this is a really great exercise to practice feeling safe inside your body. It
Mm.
can be hard, especially like if you've faced trauma in the past, it can be really difficult to find that place of safety again. And of course, if you have experienced traumatic things, you definitely need to go see and work with someone, work with a professional. But I think like that could be really helpful. So that's definitely something that I'd love to look
Mm.
into more, or even just bringing, cultivating a sense of comfort inside your body too. I mean, even with me, sometimes I often feel like I'm living outside my body and looking in, and this was a good exercise of bringing myself back and like feeling good and like cultivating feelings of safety and comfort. It was
And
interesting.
control a little bit. I mean, hopefully, I know
Yeah.
that's a word we shy away from, but in this sense, I think it's really important to remember that there's a lot that when we're performing, there's so much that can feel out of control, and there is a lot that's outside of our control. But that doesn't mean everything's out of our control. So it's really important to remember that the things that are in our control and to remember to take control when we start to feel like things are starting to spiral.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me back to like the mind body connection. And there's so many great books on it that I've been slowly working my way through. Like The Body Keeps the Score is one
Oh,
of,
that's such a good one. Oh my word, he's brilliant.
yeah. So if anyone listening is interested in studying more about
Yes.
mind body connection and how these mindfulness exercises can actually help make positive physical changes in your body, that's a great one to start with. It's by
Vanderkolk.
yeah,
Oops,
Vander.
I'm looking because I thought I had it right. Hold on.
I'm looking at it's on my shelf.
I don't have it with me, but this is another one that I'm working my way through. Maybe this is, we should have a book.
Yeah, we should have a book club.
Yeah, there's good
There's
stuff.
also When the Body Says No,
I don't know what.
and I'm like looking at my bookshelf because they're
Yeah.
it's on my reading list, but it's yeah, it's really fascinating, and it can really be the way out for a lot of people who are experiencing chronic pain. It can be a piece of the puzzle that's really important. That's not it's getting more popular and more talked about, but a lot of people still, I think, don't realize how much power
Right.
the mental aspect can have on physical pain. So,
And I will add this one little caveat too, like you're wise to bring up the trauma part. And a lot of times people that have experienced trauma, and Vanderkolk talks about this in his book, if sometimes the visualizations are hard.
yeah,
And so sometimes it's better to do it with your eyes open. So, and
yeah,
that certainly I should have mentioned that at the beginning, but yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But also just making sure you work with a professional too is
Yes. Yes.
highly, highly important. And just figuring out what works best for you because not everything works for everyone.
Right.
But hopefully this was helpful. I know it really like it just put me I felt like I was floating. I was like, "Ah, I feel so relaxed and like I'm in my bubble and I never want to leave my bubble."
And
Yeah.
I think that we should develop that total positive association with practicing, but I think a lot of times we go into it like, okay, I'm gonna do this, like I'm gonna knock it out. But it should be this thing of like, I love it. It feels so good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It also reminded me of I attended a talk by a feng shui teacher, Angie Zhou, a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about like the brain's association with your room, especially your room is important to cultivate feelings of comfort and safety in.
Yeah.
She was also talking a little bit about colors and what it signifies
Mm,
in our brains. So that might
mm,
be an interesting topic to explore
that
in the
could be good.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but awesome. So thank you so much, Jessica, for this wonderful exercise. If you missed it, definitely go back and watch it and let us know what you think. If you feel so inclined and you've been enjoying these sessions, any donation would be super appreciated. We are in the process of finalizing a schedule with a lot of really exciting guest artists coming up, and we would love to be able to pay them in the future for their hard work and their time. So even if you just want to donate a couple dollars each time, the donate link to the Diaz del Moral Foundation is in the description. And all donations will go towards the Diaz del Moral Foundation, which supports the Puerto Rico Flute Symposium, Puerto Rico Summer Music Festival, Latin American Chamber Players, Puerto Rico Collaborative Piano Institute,
Yes.
and yeah, and there's one more. Yes.
Oh,
Yes, but it supports a lot of wonderful organizations.
and
So
it's tax deductible. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. And next week I will be talking about efficient practicing, some research with that, and also guiding you through some tips that can help you be really efficient, intentional, and positive in the practice room so you can get a lot of work done in a short amount of time, which is all of our goals. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment below or send us an email at wellness@prflutesymposium.org, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.
Bye.